Richard Godwin.
Okay, a lot of people have been asking questions about, what happened to Susie. And so I went through frame by frame through the video after I went to the site and knew where everything was. And so I was able to go back through the video and step by through it frame by frame, and I knew where to look for things, like where Freddie might be as he was.
How many times have you viewed this video?
I don't know, 1,000 times maybe.
Okay, so you think you know what you're looking at?
I'm pretty sure I know what I'm looking at. I'm absolutely certain.
I'm saying this point to let you know that this man's probably seen more of this over and over than anyone in the world. So if he was going to find something, this would be the man to find it.
Okay, so I knew where his backpack was, and as he came up the trail in the video, he swung his camera to the right from away from his backpack, and he was moving the camera rapidly, but he paused just long enough for me to be able to capture a couple frame grabs of Susie's white residue, and you can actually see Freddie laying down here. It's difficult. You have to know what you're looking at, but I know that this is the creature's body laid out this way. I can see the leg here bent this way, and the other leg here, and the torso continues up this way to the head. Susie's white remains is right here, and I'll show you again. This is where he actually, he was by Freddie, and he paused for a split second over Susie's remains to probably just to look at her for one last time before he leapt away over toward the obelisk. But this white area here, this very bright white area, this is the brown ground here, the normal color of the ground. This white residue throughout this whole area is Susie's remains. So a lot of people didn't think that he actually didn't, I don't think, knew he had this on the videotape, or he wasn't sure that he had it good enough to be able to present.
Right.
And the fact that he was moving throughout this whole time blurred many of these frames, but I was able to capture some that were still enough that they weren't so blurry that I couldn't use them. One other thing just to prove about the shadows. This is me standing at the site. Unless somebody wants to believe that I've cropped myself into this photo, you'll notice that it's the only shadow that you see is a little tiny shadow under my foot right here. And so, that's just and I'm in the open area pretty much there. And this is in the area, the vicinity of the obelisk and Freddie. So
Approximately
you can see,
what time of day, please?
this is almost the same time of day, it's about 3 p.m.
Thank you.
In fact, if you go to my website, I detailed that all here. It says the ambient lighting conditions in the picture below are fairly representative of the conditions that existed the day Dr. Reed took his original pictures. It was overcast. It's approximately 3 p.m. And that all deals with the site itself. Let's go to one more thing dealing with the site. A lot of people said that there was no full body shots, and the ones that we actually did have were on top of the thermal blanket. And the problem with that thermal blanket is it's very reflective. And black reflected down into that makes the image of, or the outline of Freddie look kind of indistinct, because you're seeing the black reflections from his suit and the thermal blanket itself, making his body look a lot bigger than it really is. So I frame grabbed these so that people could see that that he does have a nice, sharp physical form. In fact, you can actually see some of the muscular contour through his leg area and hip area through here. His head's up here behind this leaf, and some people say, well, why couldn't you get better frame grabs than that? And the problem is there was only like 10 frames that had this torso shot in it that were clear enough for me to be able to frame grab. And it just so happened this leaf just was in the way, and there was nothing I could do about it. I only show you guys what I have, and that's all I have. But you can see his head here in this picture, and you can see his body leaving away here, and his legs separating here, and his arm over here and here. So, but I think those are a little more representative of the form that this creature had. He was very lithe, very, very slender, and had no fat on his body whatsoever. And you can see in that picture also, let me go back to that real quick. The head is actually kind of a bluish white. And that's the color it was in the woods. But
Bluish gray.
I'm sorry, bluish gray. Well, you be the judge. Look at it yourself. In any case, when he brought this creature back home and unwrapped it, what would you describe it as? What color?
Well, from the time that I left the forest, it was a bluish, grayish pink if you really got up close and looked. But it changed and became a darker, almost a brownish gray pink. And then as it set in the freezer, it changed to more of a grayish color.
Okay. One thing I wanted to make people aware of is the resonant viewing that was done on this by Dr. Simeon Hine. And I'm going to show
Is
you the
everybody
result.
familiar with remote viewing? Resonant viewing is literally the same.
Simeon, or Dr. Hine describes it as resonant viewing, and he gives a description of why he's called it resonant viewing versus remote viewing. I think partially to separate himself from people like Ed Dames and the like, and also because he just felt it was a better description of the procedure and the technology involved. But in any case, these are pictures that were drawn, and keep in mind that resonant viewing is done with no target. In other words, these people do this with no information. They're given a random number and no information whatsoever, and they come up with their target. And this is what his 4 viewers drew. And this one here, as you can see, is very, very, very close to the shape of the obelisk. You know, even to the point that it's extended and longer on one side than it is on the other, which we thought was very interesting. This shape here is kind of reminiscent of it also. And again, this is done by independent people with no information whatsoever. So he did some sessions on it. He's got these up on his website, and you can read the results. They did 6 sessions on it, which I won't go into detail, just to make people aware of the Resonant Viewing Institute. It's hyperlinked off my website, so if you're interested, you can go there and take a look at it. Okay. Let's go into fire in the sky analysis. A lot of people have been saying that they thought that this was a prop from Fire in the Sky because they felt it looked too much like it.
Fire in the Sky is a movie that was produced out of Hollywood in representation of the Travis Walton story.
Right. Now, I think people are probably, there's probably many people in this room that are familiar with the Travis Walton story and have seen the Fire in the Sky movie. These are side-by-side comparisons of the 2 creatures. And what I did was I just went through and mostly looked at the cranial and the facial features and the neck region features, and I detail those in subsequent pages here. But just a quick side-by-side comparison, you can see that while the creatures, you know, they are both alien-looking, I think when you detail the difference between them, you can see there's really no relationship whatsoever. And let's go down through
Those
these.
creatures, fire in the sky, also do not resemble the description that Travis
That's
Walton
true.
wrote in
That's
his
true.
book.
In fact, Johnathan has talked to Travis Walton, and he confirmed that. And one thing that I think is fairly evident here is there's an ear-like feature here on the fire in the sky creature. And I think these are the most distinct differences. There's an ear here, and there's actually a 2-part neck construction. There's like this umbilical-like protrusion from the neck up to the underside of the chin. And then you can actually see through this area right here. There's a distinct separation between the neck. It's 2-part. There's no 2-part neck construction on this creature, and there's no ear. In fact, you can see barely, and you'll be able to see later on, this area right here, we believe is a tympanic structure that acts or functions as an ear, and that's present on both sides of the head. It's kind of a circular membrane. There's no ear canal, and there's no ear structure, unlike the fire in the sky creature, which there is. And then I went and examined the eye and the mouth and the jawline. And you can see in these 2 pictures that Jonathan's creature, the eyes are deeply slanted and very narrowly slit, whereas these eyes in this picture here are more or less human looking. They're not deeply slanted, they're rounded. The mouth here on Jonathan's creature is upturned and very, very pinched up and narrow. This creature has a very wide mouth and a wide jawline. And it actually looks like a very thick jawline, actually. And over here you have a very frail, fragile jawline. Let's go into cranial structure. Now you'll notice that the reed creature here has these protrusions. They're cranial type structures that do not exist on this nice smooth scalp here. And then also, you'll notice in the brow region, this looks like a nice smooth muscular area above the brow. And I've blown this area up on Freddie. You can actually see that it's kind of a rugged looking tissue. And I'll let Johnathan tell you what do you think that the texture of that is?
Well, it's kind of a cartilage under the skin, I would assume.
We'll cover that.
That's difficult to discern at this point. We have some more information
Yeah.
regarding DNA samples.
All right. The last thing on this, just for my comparison, was the neck vascularity comparison. And you'll see some better pictures of this later on, but most of you have seen some of these pictures up on the website, know that Freddie has really prominent veins and vascular structure on his neck, and there's nothing like that on the Fire in the Sky creature. So my conclusion is that there's really no similarities worth mentioning that would force me or anyone else that I can see to draw any conclusion that this is a prop in the movie, or any relation to Fire in the Sky whatsoever. Now, getting to what someone just mentioned there about reptilian. There was an email floating around from a gentleman named Peter Davenport who runs the Newport up in the Pacific Northwest, up in Seattle. He's also a frequent guest of Art Bell. Apparently he's now a forensics expert, and he postulated that he didn't believe that you could extract DNA from red blood cells. And to give you a little history on that, Johnathan took some blood and tissue samples to the University of Washington to be analyzed. And in the course of doing that, in the analysis, and they actually announced the preliminary results on the Art Bell show, they announced that there was an elevated nucleus in the red blood cell. Or actually, he said they resembled red blood cells, to be more specific. But he said they had an elevated nucleus, and they were able to extract the nucleus, and that's what they did their DNA analysis on. Now, there are many people that want to compare, for whatever reason, human to alien, and they want to make that leap that if it's true for humans, it must be for aliens as well. Well, I don't think that's true necessarily, but I still wanted to go through and understand how that might have happened. How were they able to extract DNA from red blood cells? Now, during the broadcast, Harold Chacon, who was one of the research team members, actually the spokesperson for the team, for the two other prominent members that were both University of Washington employees, Harold Chacon said that the skin looked rather reptilian, or it resembled a reptile. He also said that in the DNA breakdown, there were 46 chromosomes. The 46 chromosomes is identical in number to human chromosomes. The difference being that 9 of those chromosomes were non-human. And they most closely resembled, surprise, reptiles, actually sea tortoise, and dolphins. So I did a little bit of checking to find out a little bit about sea tortoises based on that information, and have that here. Now, a lot of people don't realize, and I didn't actually myself, I am not a medical expert, so I did a little research and found out that red and white blood cells come from the bone marrow. And while they're in the bone marrow, the newly formed red blood cells are actually nucleated. And it's only when they exit the bone marrow do they shed their nucleus to increase their oxygen carrying capacity. So it's very, very likely that if you have a compound fracture of the bone, there could very well be red blood cells that still possess a nucleus. But armed with also the information that it could be reptilian-based, or like a sea tortoise, I found a website called seaturtle.org, And on that website, I quoted from that website, but I'll also hyperlink to it real quick so you can see what it says for yourself. But on that website it says, since sea turtles possess nucleated red blood cells, it is possible to obtain DNA non-lethally from blood samples, which can be frozen or stored at ambient temperature in a lysis buffer. So, based on the fact that this breakdown of DNA showed a relationship that closely resembled the DNA of reptiles, I don't think it's that much of a leap to anticipate that the red blood cells were, in fact, nucleated, just as they said. And I'll take you to that website here real quick. This website here is where I actually extracted that statement from, and it says right here, and you can read it for yourself. I'm not just making it up. And this is actually this is out of the Marine Turtle newsletter, the references and stuff. So I mean, this is not just, you know, some bozo on the street putting up a website about sea turtles.
Where is Grady now?
We'll talk about that later. Don't jump too far ahead of me now.
You guys wanted the information, so you're going to be here.
They make us leave quicker.
Well, that's true.
Well, hurry.
You should we move on a little bit quicker?
Well,
What time is it?
3:30.
3:35.
Okay, well, we're doing okay.
what I want you all to realize is there is a tremendous amount of information that has been researched in this case. And if people want to see it and read it for themselves and understand it, you'll see the truth. You'll find it yourself. You know, it's not hard to see if you just take the time to look for yourself.
Okay,
Most of our lectures take up to 5+ hours. Okay, and I see large eyes looking at me, what? Yeah, there is an insane, this case is so heavily and amazingly documented. We had 2 totally independent researchers look into it. Of course, interviewing one, Mr. McAvoy, who unfortunately couldn't be with us, but the other.
well, you know, a lot of people have said, you know, how do they cover this stuff up? If this phenomena is going on, how do they cover it up? You know, how is that done? Well, one thing I wanted to point out to folks is that if you go to websites like MUFON's website or Newborg or NIDS or QFOS, these are reporting centers. And if you have some paranormal occurrence, you're supposed to contact these reporting centers and let them know all about your encounter.
Which is what I did originally.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is probably not a wise choice, at least initially. And the reason that I believe that, and Art Bell does, and Wendell Stevens, and many others in the industry, Robert O'Dean, Heine Masson, these reporting centers are being monitored by members of the dark side, by members of these covert organizations.
They're nothing more than a database supplying the government with this information.
Yep. And you'll notice if you go to these websites that they make no mention whatsoever of how to protect yourself and your evidence before you report this information.
Real quickly, just let me mention that there are 2 things, and one appeared in I think it might have been Discovery or Popular Science recently. They talked about, at some length, about Echelon and Tempest, 2 devices used by the National Security Agency. One is the ears of the NSA and the other is the eyes. Well, these guys just got caught staring and looking at Airbus, all their corporate information and everything. And they now know that they also turned these 2 devices on the general public. So they're watching us. And if they're watching us, I guarantee you they can get to all these databases and they can see and hear everything that's going on within them. So when you leave your information with these people, even though these people may be very well intentioned, of course, but the government's saying, this is perfect. They'll just give them the information and then we'll extract it and you'll never hear or see those people again.
Yep. One of the things that Johnathan did, as he said, is he contacted MUFON, and what happened was, we believe, is that call was either intercepted by someone or we don't know the sequence of events, but we know what happened. 2 people showed up that claimed to be MUFON investigators, They met with Johnathan. One was a woman, one was a man. The woman was carrying a clipboard. She looked like she knew what she was doing. She took down notes. Johnathan gave her some photographs and some videotape. They walked away, and he felt they were going to go do an investigation. Well, when he called him back to find out what the status was, the person who answered the phone said, "I've never heard of those investigators, and I have no idea what evidence you're talking about." They had never heard of him or his evidence or anything else. And so the best we can figure is that he was duped by some people posing as MUFON investigators, and they collected his evidence to see what he had. And they learned a lot, I'm sure, whoever these people were. No, that evidence never came. Yeah, they didn't volunteer it back.
That was originals or copies?
Original, 75% of my material is gone. What you are seeing is what is left.
Keep in mind, Johnathan did not know, he's not a paranormal investigator, he just fell into this. He didn't know what
I
the
was
proper
looking
procedure
for
was.
help.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't know what to do. A lot of you folks in here are much more educated on this stuff, and you'd say, well, you would never give away your originals. Well, people who know how to deal with this information, you're right. They probably wouldn't give away their originals. Somebody who was never interested in this, not even peripherally interested in it, would probably not know that. And they trust people, just inherently. And unfortunately, he learned early on that you can't trust anybody. And I'll tell you, he was much tighter with everything from there on out. These two individuals here, I want to talk a little bit about because I want to show you their news clippings. These were the two people that were involved with the DNA analysis at the university. It says here, Dr. Roger Haggett was shot to death in his office, right here, was shot dead in his office. Now, they have painted a picture around this as if it was something explainable, but I knew this gentleman, Dr. Haggett. I knew what he was working on, the DNA analysis. I also knew his research assistant, Michael Wessels. This man is dead, okay, shot to death. No witnesses. Someone walked in his office, shut and locked the door, fired some shots into him, and then turned the gun on themselves. There were no living witnesses to say what happened. This gentleman here, Michael Wessels, Professor Michael Wessels, Roger Haggett was the director of pathology for the University of Washington. Okay, very prominent, world-renowned pathologist. He was on the worldwide speaking tour. It was a crushing blow to us to learn of his death. This gentleman here, Michael Wessels, was found at the bottom of a cliff. Again, no witnesses. All right. Now, does anybody in this audience think it's just coincidence that these two people were working on our DNA analysis and they are now
They
dead?
died within 2 months of each other,
Yeah, they all died within 2 months of each other.
just before they were going to release the findings.
Who was the shooter, according to the police?
According to the police, it was a fellow colleague of his, a disgruntled colleague of some type. That's what they claimed. So, but again, there's no witnesses, so who's going to argue with them on it, you know? There was no one in the office when that shooting took place except those two individuals, and they are both dead. There was no one with Michael Wessels. Michael Wessels was an experienced mountain climber. An experienced mountain hiker or a climber does not go climbing a peak that they already had failed to climb before with others. He doesn't go by himself, okay? Any experienced mountain climber will tell you, you do not go mountain climbing by yourself, period. Especially on a dangerous peak. And he actually had tried to scale this peak before with a couple other people, and it failed. So it doesn't seem likely that he would go by himself, to me.
Also, it should be noted that the computers in both of these people's residence and offices were confiscated within 3 hours after they were found dead.
Now, I
So
mean,
no one can locate them.
How do we know?
How do we know?
That they confiscated the
From
computer.
the university themselves. Yes.
I'm sorry, what was that?
He still had genetic material.
No, actually the material that was used to do the DNA analysis was pretty much used up in the process of doing the analysis. There was a very small sampling of tissue and blood.
Did they do any blood chemistries on it or anything like that, saying whether it was oxygen
Yes.
carrying?
Yes, and that's actually, if you go to my website, you can actually listen to Harold Chacon's interview on the Art Bell Show that details all that.
Thank you.
Okay, and that's actually it's a fairly fact-intensive audio. Anybody who's interested in the DNA stuff should listen to that for sure. But you know, this comes directly from the Seattle Times web archives. You guys can get to this stuff yourself. I just pulled it off their archives. Okay, so I mean, we're not just making this stuff up. These people are in fact dead. And I knew about these people, and so did Dan McAvoy, who was one of our other, in fact, Dan McAvoy is the other researcher who's been helping with this, actually interviewed these two individuals and their involvement in the DNA analysis. And we're going to play his stuff here later on in the program. Is there anything else you want me to cover before we move on?
No, I think that's good.
Because we're running close on time here. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here, and then we're going to watch some more video stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to Dan's stuff, Mr. McAvoy, but we will get to the link and Freddie,
Okay.
because I know you want to see.
What I want to do is, I just want to let you guys know that, I'm going to continue to help Dr. Reed, and anybody who feels like that they can help him, if there's something that you can contribute, I don't know what it might be, but, just let us know what you think you can do, and then we'll assess it and see what we can do. I'm going to continue to help him, and I hope others will too, so thanks a lot.
This man has done a tremendous amount of work for me, and I want all of us to give him a hand. As you can see, there is a tremendous amount of information if you take the time to look. We've tried to present things in some kind of order so that you could keep linear to the story. It's a little disjointed, a little hard to follow, but we'll try to take it back a step. When I brought Freddie home, the reason we started calling it Freddie was my friend Gary and I went down this path of trying to understand what we had, what was I to do now with this thing. It was in my freezer. Who was I supposed to contact? As you heard, I tried to contact MUFON. We made the call. Some of our evidence was taken away from us, and we learned the hard way that you just don't do that. After that, short time after that, our house was broke into. My house, Gary's house, other friends of mine were pursued and harassed, and a lot of evidence was taken out of other people's houses as well. But to go back a bit, the night I brought him home and put him in the freezer, I brought him back in the house. And I had unwrapped it in the garage and brushed it off and taken the link artifact out, which is this silver bracelet that I found in the woods next to him, his body. And I brought Freddie in the house and I photographed it. I videotaped it, and we have that videotape now, and you can see it.
Do you have to
Then
do
you
this?
leave lights off.
Okay.
Again, I was very sick when I was doing this, so it's not the best video in the world, but I think it's pretty representational of what actually was going on. This is a second generation copy of the tape, so there is some distortion to it. This is the thermal blanket. Laying next to it was a tape measure, measuring out about 5 feet. I took all of this videotape by myself. Those are the straps for my pack, which I just cinched up and carried. This is also the videotape that Ardell has and has had looked at.
Have you ever noticed any sound, or did you ever notice this thing possibly breathing in there while you were doing that? Because I noticed.
Well, there are some faint sounds, but at this time, I felt this thing was dead. Believe me.
One of the reasons why you see this, I want you to watch the eyes of Freddie here.
There's a video we'll show you later that will blow you away because it really shows you the blinking big time.
Now, at this time, I did not, and was not aware of this movement, of the facial movement. I said it was dead. It was not breathing as far as I could determine.
Yeah, you guys can see the camcorder he had. The viewfinder he had was about a 1-inch square black and white viewfinder. He could not see the eyes blinking in that little tiny viewfinder.
People have said there's no full body shot. There is a full body shot.
The suit was what Johnathan took to calling the skin suit. At one point, he attempted with Gary to cut the suit, and they did so with an X-Acto, and it cut, and it sealed itself up again. Then he cut it again, and it sealed itself up again. Then, upon the third cutting, the suit learned what was going on, and it wrapped itself around and refused to let him cut any further. It defended itself.
I think that might just be the second generation
The
copy.
skin was very, very dense and very coarse, almost like pig skin.
You slept in the same house as this?
No, this was in my garage, separate from the house.
Now watch his right eye here as he leans it forward.
The dark coloring on the far right side is the blood from the wound in the back of his head.
That sound is coming from Freddie.
Yes. Those are surgical gloves, they're my hands. Open the eyelid, very dense, very coarse skin.
You're going to see kind of a sheen in the eye. I mean, you can see that it's alive.
When I hit this thing in the woods, I split its skull open about 1 inch by 1.5 inch. It actually broke the skull and the skin and created a skull bone flap, which you'll see in a minute. This thing had long arms, very long arms, and 3-fingered mittens that were part of the suit. Not in addition, but part of the actual suit. Inside these mittens was 5 fingers. Just like our hands.
The thumb?
Yes, an opposing thumb.
How could you tell? Feel it through
I
the
could
mitten?
feel the finger through the material.
Have you ever used the genitalia or anything like that?
No, I could not discern its sex. Although we did do a later close-up, hands-on exam where I went over almost every inch of the suit to try to find anything I could, and I could not determine that.
About bone structure too, like pelvis
Yes,
and
that's all in
thoracic.
that's all in the book, and there are some definite differences between human and Freddy.
Were you ever able to get the suit off?
No,
Maybe this is a Frederica. Maybe, you couldn't feel it.
How did you know if it was a man or a woman?
one thing I will tell you that I haven't said today is that 3.5 days after I brought this home, I went out to my garage because I was going to show this to someone from my university. And they abruptly canceled, so you can see the wound. They canceled their appointment with me and could not come over, and I was frustrated, so I went to put the table and lights away that I had set up for him to view this. And I heard a sound in my garage, and it was a scratching sound. It sounded like it was coming from underneath the freezer. I thought the compressor was going out, or something, or maybe rats. And so I thought I'd better open the lid and check the temperature. The was inside. It was a thermometer. And I opened the lid, and this thing set up out of the end of the blanket and screamed at me. And it was alive and moving as much as I am right now. Now I had a maimed creature, which is a whole different ballgame.
That's like blood coming out of
That's like blood.
It's a flat bone. And what color was the blood again? You can guess all of them.
The color that looked like in real time, was
It's
it,
a grayish, pinkish
what about the blood?
blue. What about the what?
The blood itself, or
Blood
whatever?
was as red as our blood.
Okay.
Was the flap just skin?
No, it was actually bone. It was skin and muscle. And it had breached the brain sac. So the cranial fluid had actually, part of it drained out.
Did you see any brain?
Oh, yeah.
Was it a man or a woman?
We have no idea if it was a male or female, and who's to say what a male or female extraterrestrial would be like, anatomy-wise. What we do know is that more than likely this entity was a hybrid, so it may have been asexual. I mean, we don't have that kind of data.
What happened to you?
9 days after I brought this thing home, I went back to my house and found vans in front of my house taking everything out of my house there was on hand trucks. I saw 5 or 6 men in jumpsuits carrying everything out of my house. So I kept going. And a few hours later, I went back and entered my house, and it looked like a hurricane had went through my house. There were holes in the walls, in the floor, in the ceiling. They had looked and probed through everything. And they had taken every personal possession that I had.
Did they take Freddie?
And Freddie was gone.
We're going to go to the blinking video here real quick, but first, the Freddy screen.
Did you give any thought to what the alien lifestyle that this had come from, what their repercussions might have been in their search for an MIA of some sort or anything to that effect?
Well, during this 9-day period, I was searching for every answer I could to try to put any sense to any of this, and I found literally none. After this creature became alive, I spent some time with it in my garage. I went back out time and time again and opened the freezer, and it got so that it would crawl out on its own and sit on the floor in front of me and look at me. I gave it some water. I tried to give it some food. It wouldn't eat. And I feel like it understood from a telepathic means, if nothing else, that I wasn't going to kill it at this point. I didn't take the shovel that was on the wall and beat it to death at this point. And I was sorry that this happened. I didn't want to kill this thing. I didn't want to hurt it. I did it to defend my dog and me out of fear and ignorance.
Yeah, what's the government doing?
But in the end, I believe it communicated with me. I believe it imparted information into me that I have very little knowledge how to discern. Little bits and pieces, little images of lots of things. And I've written some of that in the book, and we're trying to work on some of that information.
So it was taken away alive.
1 second. One of the things that I think is important to bring up, people have commented, how could you have kept it in the freezer even after it was alive? Freddie chose to stay in the freezer for some reason. The cold was conducive to the elements of healing it. And this thing was strong. If Freddie didn't want to stay there, he could have torn Johnathan in half. They're much, much stronger physically than we are.
You said the obelisk was cold too, didn't you?
Right, like dry ice. When I went out to the freezer that day, he sat up and screamed at me so hard and so loud that it felt like there was a hand forcing me back against the wall in my garage. Later on, it continued to do this, but then finally it stopped. screaming at me. But I recorded that scream, and I played it on our bell, and I can play it here, if you want to hear it. Yeah, this was not the first time. This was something that happened later on. This was opening the freezer, it's screaming, and closing the freezer.
Yeah.
Did you slam the door shut?
Did that sound analyzed?
Yeah,
What?
That sounds an awful lot like some kind of communication modulation.
well, there's a lot of harmonics to it, and there's a lot of air sound to it, so we know it's not mechanical. So we're working on it further. People are looking into it. Dan, we have, after the video that you just saw was taken, Cole Larson, one of our video and, webmasters for OdysseyLink.net, took that video and analyzed it, frame by frame. Unbeknownst to me, I did not know it was going on. He showed me this videotape the night before we were to present in Laughlin, the first time. So you can imagine what Robert and I thought when we saw this at midnight the night before we were to present the next day, proving, in fact, that Freddie was alive when I took this videotape. You can show that.
Yeah, my response is I just about passed out. So,
One thing I think it's really important to note is that Johnathan met Cole in San Diego, and that in the original presentation they did, they never mentioned this blinking because they didn't know it,
or on our bell.
or on our bell. So I think it's, if someone's going to claim that this was all invented somehow, I think the most impressive thing about it has got to be the blinking. Now, why wouldn't you be talking about that and nothing else? So now, Cole did this, and we're going to go through it at normal speed a few times, and then we're going to go through it in slow-mo, and then we're going to zoom it up in slow-mo. So you're going to get many, many looks at this blinking.
This is the original footage that I shot. So he's showing you here the original footage.
Now, this is just in real time with the, no. Yeah, he's looking right at the camera.
Exactly.
Did you ever feel that some of his buddies might be coming by, being that here?
I really didn't think about that.
Yeah.
This is the same sequence repeated. They mark the blinking. You can actually see the pupil of the eye slid back.
On the slow-mos that are coming up here, I want you to look real close because you're going to actually be able to see the transition of the eyelid open and closing. There's not just an abrupt open or close. You're going to see the transitions happen.
And the facial muscles actually change.
Yeah, there is a little bit of facial movement.
His very large eyes.
You're a very brave person, I just want to say that.
As a second generation. You know, in regard to being brave, it's either brave or really stupid. But at this time, when I took this, I did not realize this thing was alive. I assumed it was dead. With a breach in its skull that size, with everything that I had done with this body prior to this, prior to it reanimating, there was no way in my mind it could be alive.
So you never noticed the blinking then?
At this
until
point,
much
I
later?
never noticed it till a year after I had gone on our back.
I see.
Right, this was the day before their March 9th presentation, was March 8th, 2000, that he first saw this.
Dr. Rita, did the reading generate something to you that made you sick, or were you just reacting to see?
Well, it's been speculated that the obelisk created some kind of arena or definite site in the area and was probably defending its user, which was Freddie. Freddie was down on the ground. Freddie was no longer moving. And Freddie did not have the link artifact on his wrist anymore. Some people have speculated that the obelisk was looking for Freddie and found me instead. And basically was probably probing me or trying to contact me to bring me back in. I don't know.
From the sound of your illness that you described, doctor, it sounds almost like radiation poisoning.
Exactly. Many people have stated that. The only residual effects that I had after going home is I did finally go to a doctor, and I was extremely dehydrated, and I had some kind of burns inside my throat that I still have today.
Low-level radiation.
Right. But all of the signs do replicate radiation poisoning.
When they cleaned out your house, where was this tape and the other?
I had, from day to day during the 9 days, I knew people were following us and stealing things out of people's houses. So as I acquired different pieces of tape, because I continued to photograph this thing in my garage, I took those pieces of tape and those videos and some of the pictures, and I would send them to different places. I sent some out of the United States. I sent some to Canada, some to Mexico, some to Sweden, you know, some to different states, different relatives.
Do you have video segments of the Freddie being alive in your garage?
Not
My
at this
question.
time.
Did you take some?
Yes, I did. I had over 65 minutes
Somebody has them.
of him being, moving and breathing and climbing in and out of the freezer.
How did it respond to you trying to give it water and stuff?
Well, at first, very timidly. It was afraid of me probably as much as I was of it. But after a while, it learned, I believe, to trust me because probably it was my superior. In one sense, it took water from me, drank it, and then threw the cup at me.
As any other prisoner would.
So I believe it was also testing me. If at any time it would have wanted to leave this environment, my garage, the door was unlocked. The freezer door lock was practically non-existent. It could have left at any time. It chose to crawl back in the freezer and close the door on itself. It
Without
liked
the link, where
cold.
would it go?
It liked the cold. Now, people have always said, what happened to Freddie? You know, everybody came and ransacked my house. They took the freezer out of my garage. They tore the door out of the wall of my garage to do so. But I believe Freddie got away. And the reason at that point that I believe he got away was I saw little frosty footprints across my floor of my garage that went to the wall. They stopped at the wall. Now I will tell you, since then, I have seen Freddie again. Yes, I have. So, I know he is alive and well and with his own.
Was he in Freddie form, or was he in?
He was in Freddie. No. No.
Are you bonded?
Well, I believe we are linked in more ways than one.
Did you ever find out who they were that took him
Maybe
away?
all of us were looking for the man.
Well, the reason I call it the link is I believe that this silver bracelet, which we can show the video next, yeah, is a controller. I think it's a bioelectric or biomechanical controller that is definitely linked between the wearer and the obelisk. I think it is either a link to keep track of the person wearing it or a leash to keep track of the person wearing
Or
it.
vice versa, maybe the Freddy was. Do you think your dog poured off the creature?
I think this fell off. This is the link artifact. It measures 4.5 inches by 3.5 inches by 3/16 of an inch in thickness. It has 4 symbols, 4 definitely etched surface symbols on it. One, the small one in the very top right-hand corner, resembles the obelisk. These symbols resemble Korean or Egyptian hieroglyphs, but they have never been cataloged ever before.
Was Freddy good, evil? Do you have any ideas?
I believe Freddy was a genetically engineered drone, a worker for a higher being that was his superiors.
And do you have any feel for why he was here?
I believe he was doing a job that he was sent to do, which was probably gathering some kind of research. This thing, after he was moving around, I didn't get that close. Anyway, the link artifact, this was analyzed and shot in Osaka, Japan, and Dan almost had the chance to do some of the analysis, but not quite. It's a very unusual shape. It's very light in weight. It weighs about 13 ounces. It's made of a composite material of beryllium, aluminum, manganese, magnesium, copper, zinc, and gold,
All the noble elements.
and also some elements and components that we have no idea what they are.
You didn't get to keep this, right? They didn't-
We'll talk about that. When this thing was placed on Freddy's left arm wrist, which I did in the garage, underneath the surface of this, it has 3 needles or pins that penetrate the arm of the wearer directly into the skin and the nerves of the arm, I believe. Once it was forced onto the arm, it immediately closed and turned black. And at that time, it didn't do anything else until I pushed that little button that's on the far other side, and it opened and turned silver.
What was his reaction when you did this? Was he
Not a thing.
was he in the freezer or in the house?
Well, at the time, I had laid him out in the garage on a table, and we were doing the close-up exam, and he had no reaction, and I didn't expect him to. And I
How many days later was that, if you could?
That was within the second day.
Okay.
Have any humans tried to wear it?
I'm sorry?
Have any humans tried to wear that bracelet?
Yes, they have.
Was there any reaction?
2 of them are sitting in front of you right now.
Was there any reaction?
Robert put this on his arm, unbeknownst to me, and got violently ill for about a week.
Did it pierce the skin?
Yes, it pierced the skin, and it felt good. You have to kind of be accepted on both sides of this thing, and that's a very long story. I did go somewhere, I'm not going to talk about that right now, but basically I went somewhere and then it spit me out. You know? So it's not a toy, but wanting to research, wanting to see what all this was about, that's me. I wanted to know, what was this thing? So Johnathan had turned around for a minute, and he was talking to me, and I grabbed it on impulse and slapped it on my arm. And I paid the price for a week.
Did it turn black and close like it did on the alien?
It didn't turn black, it just closed. The suit probably had some effect to it turning black. We don't know.
What was your feeling? Nausea, or how did you, what was the feeling that came on you immediately?
Well, There was nothing actually immediate. It was just well, that happened after, yeah. When I came back, I was extremely sick. I was nauseated, I vomiting, I had a fever and a temperature.
Where'd you come back from? Spain or something?
I'm not going to say where I went right now.
The undersurface of this is kind of a matrix or fibrous material. It's almost a sandwich type material. These are the 3 pins. If I had a pointer, I'd point them out. Is this a pointer?
How was the reaction to your skin from the penetrations?
It's not working. See if we
That
got
one
it.
right there, it's right there.
Oh, there it is.
There, there.
Okay, thank you. Those are the pins that penetrate the undersurface. They are, at the base of each pin is a sphere of almost pure emerald.
Oh.
It makes some real nice earrings. Very unique.
Have any idea?
Again, was there a physical reaction to your skin when you got pierced by that?
The second this thing penetrates your arm, it turns instantly cold. The pain goes away very quickly, in a matter of a second.
Have you ever thought that Susie probably saved your life?
Yes, I
Because
have.
if that bracelet was still on the beam.
Yes, I have.
What was your second encounter with Freddie, and why won't you tell us where you went?
Well, I'm trying to give you some idea of where this all came from prior to jumping ahead. Okay?
Did you go physically, or did you have more of an out-of-body type of a thing?
No, I went physically.
He's going
Okay.
to talk about that in a second.
Four
so-
people saw it happen.
Okay.
Anyway, from each end of this, it's thought and has been speculated that it's possibly a transmitter. We know that of some type, that it possibly transmits energy to and from something. We assume the obelisk or some other source. Where's your little pointer? Who had the little pointer? Can I borrow your pointer? Each end, there's a little notch in this end. You just push the end.
No, the button's down at the front end.
This little notch right here
Right there.
is thought to be probably either receiving or transmitting it. This big notch is the opposite. Because the mathematics involved in that angle and this angle are literally the same. This thing emits an anomaly of radiation every 15 to 20 seconds, a pulse of radiation. And it still does it to this day. And it's constant. Whether it's on you or off you, it does its thing.
Big back engineering.
No. This thing is not in my possession. It is out of this country. It is stored. It has been analyzed. Just a good look at the emerald spheres and the pins or...
This would have to be a very highly sophisticated communications device representing a miniaturization technology that we don't have yet.
It is unbelievable. People that looked at some of this information have said they had no idea how to even begin to explain what they were looking at. This material, underneath this black surface, there is a plant-like fibrous material that is living tissue that they believe is a living circuit. So part of this is actually a living thing.
A neurosympathetic circuit.
Right.
Where?
Exactly. A biological interface to its wearer.
Well, what if Freddie actually came here to contact you, and the big guys are working with you?
Well, let's put it this way. I put it on, I contacted them, and they don't want it back.
And the rest of it come with it.
For your troubles.
I guess.
That's what I think Freddie sacrificed his health to come help you, and you...
Now, I will tell you, the other gentleman who isn't here today, name is Dan McAvoy. And he is a longtime ufologist and researcher. and has done great deals of research on other things besides my case. He came forward and decided to help me and give me a chance to prove myself, as he's put it. And I said, fine, we'll do this together. Well, believe me, he no longer doubts me. He's seen this work. He sat next to me when I used this thing. He saw me leave the point of exit and return within about 10 seconds. So did 3 other people. I just disappeared. And when I came back, something came back with me in the corner of the room. One of Freddie's family, or shall we say hierarchy, a being of light, a large, 6, 7 feet tall, very angelic, very humbling creature. When you are in their presence, you want to be nowhere else. You are in the presence of what feels like God. And they are crawling inside every pore of your body. You don't want to speak, you don't have to speak. They're inside of you. Any questions you have, you can't ask. They already know. It's just amazing.
His reaction was getting real sick for a week. What happened to you?
Well, somehow I was able to use this. Maybe they gave me the gift to use this.
Maybe it was what, for the price you paid, you were allowed to make that trip and come back.
Well, there's a lot of information that's in the book about why I may have been given this opportunity. There's a lot of speculation about, everybody says, well, there's no accidents. Well, I have a hard time believing that because I came from a science background. But by experiencing all of this firsthand, I now can't measure my world any longer with the yardstick that I used to. Because now I have to look outside of the box that I was taught was my physical world. And I know outside of the box is really the reality.
Many of us here are aware of that.
I believe that. A lot of people are becoming much more aware of that, and those are the people who have been supporting me. And I thank you for that.
I just want to say, yeah, absolutely, we need each other. It's this kind of communication that's going to help us all move forward.
And when I had this, and they took this to Japan, they tried to bend this thing in a press, in a hydraulic press. They could not move this at all. And it's 3/16 of an inch in thickness. So this is an incredibly amazing piece of engineering, to say the least.
When this closed over the arm, there were no hinges or anything.
No, it just basically molds itself around your arm and then releases the same way.
How did the marks from the pins do on your arm? Did it heal
I had
well?
3 holes in my arm.
Do you
3
still
very
have them?
small
I mean, did
holes.
it stay? Did it go away real
No, it
easy?
went away like any scratch would go away.
No infection, none of that kind of
Not
problem?
quite like the bullet hole in my shoulder, though.
We've heard about that. I heard Dr. Lear was going to examine it, and he never got to.
Let me field that question, because this goes back to what I was talking about early on. If you treat this man with respect, he will cooperate, okay? Dr. Lear came up to Johnathan in a very antagonistic way. And, if someone's going to challenge you, your immediate reaction is, "What the hell? I don't owe you anything, and who the heck are you, Mr. Foot Doctor?" So, I think he did what I would have done. I don't owe you anything, and I'm not going to just do whatever you demand. Another thing to consider is that everyone who has contacted this man has said, "We want to investigate you." You know how many people have contacted this man? And they all say the same thing. "Well, if you let me look at your evidence, then everybody will believe it. But I won't believe it if I don't do it myself." Well, that's what everybody is saying. I've got to do it myself, or I'm not going to believe it. Well, how many people do you think are out there that want to do this kind of investigation? There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people that are trying to get this man to cooperate, like Dr. Lear wanted to.
Except for the time when I asked them for help.
Exactly. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you a video of the supposed non-existent bullet wound.
Bullet wound in my shoulder. And how this happened is after I left Laughlin, after I left San Diego, in March of '99, after presenting my first material, Robert 9, I went home and I went to Canada. 2 days later, I was shot in a parking lot, broad daylight, where the guy walked up to me, put a gun in my chest. I moved the gun away from here to here and it fired. And I probably did it myself by forcing it away from the center of my chest. I mean, it was a reaction. I didn't think of it. I thought it missed me. But somebody told me it didn't.
I want to point out too that in Laughlin, I had been privy to the bullet wound beforehand, so I'd seen it. Pat McLeod had seen it. Dan Arita saw it. Dan McAvoy, who is a Special Forces airborne ranger, knows a lot about ballistics and all this. He saw it, and Dr. Simeon Hines saw it.
And the morning of the presentation, this is the entry wound. The morning of the presentation, I volunteered to have them photograph this. I went downstairs and sat in front of their videographer and had them do this. Not this tape, but another one. And after that, they weren't satisfied. They said, "We demand that you come up here and let us take off your clothes." And I said, "No way."
This is really how they approach you.
Does this look like a scratch to you? No, I didn't. I was living with a doctor at the time. Does that change the fact of what it is?
I'm just asking a question.
No, I'm asking you a question.
I don't know.
See, because
I couldn't tell you if that was a mobile.
no, but see, that's the problem. People ask questions like that that are very pointed.
No, that was a simple question. I didn't know. Maybe you did. I don't know a lot about your case. That's why I asked you.
How long into the healing process was this film taken?
Right here, this was about 2 months.
No, that was about 2 weeks.
No, it was about 6 weeks. Right here. And it's still there.
You still got full use of your shoulder
It's
and
still
all
there.
out of it?
Still in my shoulder.
Still good? Good.
You know, there's a great big crater in my back. So, you know, it's not paper mache, it's not rubber cement. No, but a lot of other people have. And see, I have a problem. My problem is I'm getting very angry at the people who won't see beyond the end of their nose. Look at the evidence, is what I'm telling people. Look, take a look at the body of evidence before you make up your mind. Don't kill the messenger. Because that's usually what happens.
That's all right.
Was that a 9 or a 45 caliber?
It was 9 millimeter,
9
because I
millimeter?
found the shell.
And it was a through and through, it kept going, you never
Yes.
found the shell?
Yes.
You guys have to understand, and sometimes I have to apologize for myself, because we have to answer these questions a billion times over, and after a while, it gets pretty frustrating. That's why I put the website up, because I got so tired of answering the same question over and over again. And so now, when somebody asks a question, I just say, read the website, or read the book, or watch the videos that are now available. It does get old after a while, and we do lose our patience, and I apologize, if I come across angry or impatient sometimes, but it just gets you down every once in a while.
Yeah, again, the evidence they expect from us, when they know there's something real there, they come at you with everything they have, and you have to jump through so many damn hoops. But their own evidence, when they have their own stuff, they don't need anything. They go up there, well, I investigated myself and it's real. What kind of information is that? We had independent people, many people, Robert O'Dean, again, Wendell Stevens, Dan, and many others look into this. And we jumped through those hoops as best we could, but we're done doing that.
This is not just about my encounter. This is about encounters that are going on all over the world. People have had similar things happen to them or worse in their family. They've been covered up for generations. I've got probably 4,000 or 5,000 emails from people who have all had these type of encounters that are afraid to come forward, afraid to say anything, because military-type people have come up to them and told them that if they do, their families, their lives, their jobs will be gone. And they can't say anything. People put their lives on the line to help me to do this. My friends are dead because I asked them to help me, okay? This is not something that's fun to be doing. if you think it is, you know, you need to find something else to look at. I'm doing whatever I can to talk about this because they helped me. And I think we need to start looking with different eyes. Yes?
Dr. Reed, when you put on the bracelet, you said you went somewhere else and you came back in about 10 seconds. When you were someplace else, what was it like?
I was someplace else for probably what felt like 30 minutes. And it felt like a round, comfortable room full of white light in front of these light-type beings and two little ones that were grabbing on the inside of my brain and basically sucking my thoughts out of my head. It was angelic. It was wonderful. I didn't want to come back.
And then when you did, there was an entity with you.
Yes.
Did you get pushback?
How long ago was that? That was about 6 months ago.
Excuse me, do you tell us any opinions of the origins of these and what their agenda may be?
I have some ideas of what their agenda is. And again, the information is in the book, okay? But I want to say something about that. A lot of it is speculation because we don't know how to completely interpret this. I mean, it'd be like you trying to interpret Chinese, not knowing Chinese. But some of it is patterning, some of it is pictures, some of it is other people telling me. You've heard me talk about the alliance. These people know. These people have been studying this stuff for probably 100 or more years. And they have artifacts that are the size of this room that I've seen. I was taken and shown something the size of an 18-wheel Safeway truck, which was just phenomenal. Okay? They have a lot of stuff. Their agenda is education, like molasses, slow and sure. They're putting millions of dollars into educating all of us to become aware that we are living in an alien presence, that we are somehow interacting with an alien presence.
Actually being guided by an alien.
Guided by an alien presence. But again, you have to follow the money. There is also human elements involved that don't want this information out. We're talking politics. We're talking power and control. You know, if we keep all of us stupid, like sheep, then we keep paying our taxes. You know? But I believe there is an agenda. I believe there is an event coming by my determination of the time frame and by other people's determination of the time frame. You've all heard the term 2012. Well, there is something coming. And what may be coming is not an event like we've been told, but more of a mechanism. If you think of the universe as a clock, a huge clock, one wheel turning the other, and finally, clandestinely arriving at a certain point. Maybe the Earth is that point. Maybe the Earth is on that end of that striking pinnacle that will finally enter some zone that will make a huge change for all of us. You've heard people talk about pole shifting and dimensional changes. You know, just the other night there was a fellow on our bell talking about all the changes that are now going on. We have to learn a new type of physics to recognize. This is exactly what I believe is going on. That we will go through a change. Whether that will be a spiritual change or an evolutionary change, I don't know. But I know it's going to happen, and I know it's starting to happen. There are things happening all over the world right now. There's a compression going on in all of us. It's real evident if you just learn to look with different eyes. Yes?
What is your advice to anyone who might end up in a similar situation as you with an injury?
What is my advice to somebody who ends up in the same situation I was in? You're not going to like it. No. If I had this to do over again, I would walk away and I would never tell a soul. This has ruined my life. Okay? I went to school for 10 years. I have no way to prove that. Except some people have gone to great length to prove it for me and have done so. All of my academic records are gone. All of them. Everywhere. Everywhere. Now you say, oh, well, maybe that's not possible. Prove it to me. Find it for me. I hired 2 attorneys they gave me my money back. Now, do you know any attorneys that give you your money back? They told me, we don't want to look into this because every time we get too close, it says FBI or NSA on it.
And if we had enough time, I'd show you the video of Dan McAvoy, who actually did all the investigations.
Dan McAvoy, in his own time, with his own expense, went out and interviewed my professors, both at San Diego State and UCLA, who taught me. But one of them actually went to my graduation. These people knew what I did. I was in their class. They talked to classmates. They talked to friends of mine, places where I lived. You know, I did exist. I did have a life before this. But people don't want to think that. They say, well, if I can't find your records, then you're making the whole thing up.
I have something to say about that too, and it's something I said to some of these posturing researchers, and that is this. All of them turned around and said, well, we can't find your records. Well, first off, Johnathan said they expunged and they got rid of my records. Well, we went to look for your records. We couldn't find them. Therefore, it can't be real. Okay? Well, I find this really fascinating and very poignant because what you have is this sub-government group dissolves all your records and all information on you. Why? Because they know how a lot of the researchers in the community work. They know the first thing they want is to hear the doctor. You know, I'll hazard a guess that most of us aren't doctors, and we all count for something. I don't care if this had happened to a doctor or a burger flipper or...
You know, if I was going to make this up, if I was going to sit down and make up a story, why would I make something up that couldn't be verified? Think about it. It makes no sense. Why wouldn't I verify something that I was working at Safeway or a truck driver so that that wouldn't be an issue? Okay?
In fact, it would to make up stuff that you know is going to be proven false would ruin your chances of making something. So to me, the only reason you would absolutely tell somebody something like that is because it's true. And I'll tell you, if you watch the videotape that we have here, or a Philadelphia presentation where we were good enough to have a lot more time than we had today, Dan McAvoy talked about all this stuff. He interviewed these people, many people, including relatives of Johnathan's. So
I just want to say one other thing. The day before we went on our bell, the last time, somebody came forward and contacted me, somebody who did not believe me, that I saw in Laughlin a couple of weeks before, who spent 10 minutes talking to me in the hallway. Somebody who had originally seen the presentation and said, oh, I don't believe this. And I said, that's fine, you don't have to. She contacted me the day before we were to go on our bell, and she said, you need to talk to me because I found something you need to know about. This woman did the research, and she found my email address at the University of Washington where I worked from 83 to 96. Okay, this information cannot be put in after the fact. It shows that I was in faculty, that I did have a job there, and I did have an email address. Okay, you can't do it after the fact. That information was there for 2 days, and now it's gone. And we knew that. The second she told us, we copied it, we logged it, and Dan has it now on file.
Unfortunately for the bad guys, because we announced it's on Art, or actually she'd sent an email to Art and Art had talked about it, hundreds of thousands of people got to see it before they got to it and removed it, very fortunately.
My Social Security number is gone. I do not exist on paper. They took $83,000 out of my bank account. I sued my bank and recovered half of it. Yes, I did.
The thing is that we, as a species, have been reduced to documentation and paper. And the government can eliminate that at any point they want to, and then you don't exist anymore. We have to begin to see past that veil.
And in this day and age, that can happen so easily. If you talk to somebody that knows about computers and software like Dan, nowadays it's a matter of a wipe of a hand.
That's why they like cashless society.
That's right, I'm going to be told that.
Dr. Reed, what was your faith, if you don't mind sharing with us before your...
My personal faith,
before the
my mother was a Christian and my father was Jewish. So I got to celebrate both.
Okay, I understand, but what, now after this experience, what are your thoughts on God?
Well, I've always believed in God. And I know for a fact that so do these entities. They believe in a higher power also. Okay? Has this shaken my faith? It's shaken my faith in human nature.
You know, somebody came up to me.
I am ashamed to be part of this race because of what they've done to me and other people. This is not fair. It's not right. You know, and it's not the truth. What is the big deal here? You know, we're supposed to learn to live with other races, aren't we? You know, we're supposed to learn to celebrate the differences. Well, I don't see any problem with it.
Somebody came up to me and she said, but doesn't this prove there isn't a God? Is Johnathan saying there isn't a God? And I said, for me personally, I'm not really a religious person, okay? I'm more of a spiritual person, but for me, it proves it even more so. That just means that God's been real busy.
Okay, I want to say one other thing to that, okay, is I've tried to keep this away from being a spiritual issue or a New Age issue because my background was science. I wanted people to see what happened to me based on just the physical aspect of what I went through. And that's what the book is about. Now, do I think there's another side to this? I think there's a huge other side to this. I think the spiritual aspect of our lives is what it's all about. You know, the physical side is almost meaningless. I think the changes that we're going to go through is a spiritual revolution.
Will you publish anything more, do you think?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Book 2 is coming out soon.
When we wrote book 1, just to give you a little idea, it took, Robert said, it took us 11 months. And I think I nearly killed this man. Because I held him to the line saying, I had to have this be the way I felt it. Not the way it needed to be a textbook case, but the way it felt to me, humanly, emotional. And that's the way the book is written. It's not written as a text case. Now, Dan McAvoy is writing it as a text case, and that'll be coming out soon. But right now, this is about me and what I experienced and how I feel about it. You know?
All I can say, as far as a very tiny preview of the next book, is it gets much more in the communication with Freddie and Johnathan. And it gives you, because of Jonathan's communication with Freddie, Freddie's perspective. Yeah, so there's a lot more coming.
To write this, we approximately went through 1,500 pages of manuscript to come up with 200 pages of a book. And what that means is there's a lot more. But I didn't know where to start, and we had to start at the beginning. And the beginning is, you got to know what happened from day one. I mean, like I said, I was not into this. This was not part of my life. I didn't even want to be part of my life. I didn't even like Star Trek, you know. But it's a reality. This is a reality. It is happening to lots of people everywhere. And we need to be respectful for those people. I know what it feels like when people turn at me and give me that look that says, oh, you're crazy, or I don't believe you. And I've learned to respect that also, because they don't know. They just haven't opened their eyes enough yet. Because I was in that same place. I was a disbeliever too. So I just say, learn to look harder. Yes?
What type of reason did the government give, if not to you, to your neighbors? You had neighbors when they just come in there and they just take all the stuff?
Matter of national security.
So if your neighbors asked what happened to you, they just said?
Right. In confiscating the videotape that I took down to a local television station, which then was confiscated by folks, escorted with the Seattle police, by the way. Their reasoning was it was a matter of national security. Now, I don't believe it is a matter of national security.
That was the reason.
Right. I believe it's a matter of human rights. I think we have a right to know. Yes?
Why did you choose to keep the bracelet out of the country?
Why did I choose to keep the bracelet out of the country?
No safe place here.
Okay, there is no safe place anywhere. If I had it anywhere near me, I'd probably be dead. I do have a couple other trump cards that I will not talk about. That's the other reason I'm not dead.
Yeah, there's a number of things we've done to safeguard ourselves, one of which is to keep some trump cards back that they know about, that they know that if they are going to kill him or one of us, that we can play that card. And we make sure they know. One of the things that I did for myself and that Dan McAvoy did was early on, we videotaped everything that we were involved with, and we sent those tapes out to other people so that if they tried to get rid of us, they weren't going to get rid of what we did or what we knew.
And all these other people have done things far greater than that. I mean, because of what I lost, I tried to tell them what I've been through. And I know that they've stockpiled money and some other information away in case it happens to them.
Wow.
You've got to protect yourself. Yes?
Do you feel you're receiving any sort of protection from these beings of light?
Well, one of the reasons I contacted them was for some help.
The library closes in 15 minutes. Please end meetings and the meeting room.
The library closes in 15 minutes.
Sorry.
We're gonna wrap up now.
One of our team, who I won't mention their name, was being attacked, both by the dark side and by another dark alien presence. I had no way to help him, and I was at my last resort. So I used it, and I went for help, and they gave me help.
Yeah, I think he was close to doing something drastic to himself, and Johnathan felt he had to intervene.
Whatever happened to Gary?
Gary was beaten and left alongside of a road. He is paraplegic, he has massive brain damage, and he will never, ever walk again.
And there's another gentleman who's in the hospital right now, who was injured just prior to our going on to Art Bell. He was run off the road. He's laying in the hospital right now with 4 fractured vertebrae and partial paralysis in one of his legs. He may never walk normally again, and he's still in the hospital right now. This is how they do it to Johnathan, is they target friends and family and acquaintances to get him to nudge him in the directions they want him to go or not go. And they've done the same thing to me, and they've done it to Dan McAvoy, and they've done it to Robert as well. They can keep us from doing anything, and they use your friends and families against you. They don't say, well, I'm going to kill you. They say, how'd you like to see your wife show up dead one day? Now, are you going to test them on this? I'm not. If they're bullshitting me or whatever, I don't know. I'm not going there. So I'm going to cooperate, and so does Johnathan. And that's why a lot of his information hasn't gotten out, because they haven't allowed it to. He's got witnesses that would come forward today. He's got some people on videotape that he will not show because he's afraid it's going to get him killed.
Witnesses to what?
Witnesses to his educational past, to his work history, to who this man is.
Yes, ma'am, back there.
Who's the earliest president who might have known about this? I imagine Clinton and Bush knows, but who's the earliest president might have known?
Well, some people say President Truman, but I really don't have all of that history. You probably have to talk to a ufologist. I only know about what's happened to me.
Dr. Reed, you have mentioned a couple minutes ago that your son was being attacked by this, I don't know if we want to call it
Entity?
Entity or a government agency.
Both.
You meant, so there is then an evil side to the alien.
Absolutely. There's 7 different alien races that are visiting our states right now.
Many people think that within the next 5 years, there is going to be some changes, some serious changes. A lot of people have a lot of speculation, but if you kind of look at it, they all seem to pull together or go together. And I guess what I'm referring to, are we going to see these beings at a more frequent pace?
I believe so.
And does this all tie into the end times or possibly the rapture?
I don't know that. I don't want to go there because that fringes on some people's religious beliefs, and I don't know that. All I know is it's going to be evident. It's going to definitely be a huge change, for all of us. It will be a huge evolutionary leap for all of us. Some will go and some won't.
And you think that'll happen in the near future?
I think that'll happen within, at the outside, 15 years.
The outside 15, and I'm sorry, I just want to ask one more question. Go ahead, I'll think of it again. I kind of want, but what you're saying though really is, you don't, it infringes on people's religion, but this all does anyway.
All right. I want to thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much.
We're done. Thank you.